Hello, welcome to California Lockdown. If you have not seen this before, I was going to kind of introduce myself. For those of you that are going, who is this guy and what's he all about? And I know everybody's busy and you have a lot of things to do and you don't have time to sit and listen to somebody with their opinion. But we are on day 49 of the California lockdown, so I just thought maybe we could talk about some things, some hope and reason, why I have hope and a reason. That's just one thing. There's a lot of things to talk about, and I've covered a lot of things about the numbers and where we're at right now. And just quickly looking over here, we have approximately 75,000 deaths nationwide right now with COVID-19. And I know it's very serious. Obviously, that's for some people that's a big number, 75,000 people. Right here where I'm at in San Luis Obispo County, California, which is on the central coast, halfway between Los Angeles to the south and San Francisco to the north. We're exactly right in the middle on the coast. So I'm as far away from San Francisco as I can get, and I'm as far away from LA as I can get. And I just love it here. This is a perfect place for me. San Luis Obispo County has about five, I would call them rural. We have about 300,000 people in this county. Most of the towns have between 40 to anywhere from 30 to 50,000 people. San Luis Obispo, the city of San Luis Obispo, which is about 20 minutes south of me, they have Cal Polytechnic University there. You may have heard of Cal Poly. That's the big draw for a lot of people to live in San Luis Obispo. So it's perfect weather, it's perfect location. I'm happy as a clam, but right now we've got this horrible virus going on, and it's terrible. Now, why should you listen to me? I don't know. Why should you listen to me? Well, I am a health worker, for one. I'm retired, I'll admit that. I spent 20 years working in a psychiatric facility, Tascadero State Hospital. And I was a psychiatric technician there. I was a shift lead for a unit. I was a unit supervisor. And I retired as a unit supervisor. And now working in a psychiatric facility, yes, you are dealing with medical issues, but nothing like say an emergency room. And I know that. Although I have the same training as what an LVN would have as far as medical. An LVN being a licensed vocational nurse, which is a little less than a registered nurse. A registered nurse has 2 years of schooling. LVN, licensed vocational nurse, has 1 year. Now, as a psychiatric technician, I was dealing with forensic patients, meaning they were felons. They'd all committed felonies. Let's put it that way, just to put it bluntly. Criminals. Okay, let's be real here. They were criminals with psychiatric issues, and they were the people that the prisons couldn't handle, and they sent them to us. And so, the reason I say that is because I do come from a health worker mindset. Although right now my heart is with the people, the restaurants, the bars, the small businesses that are closed right now, that are just being crushed by this lockdown, this California lockdown. I don't agree with it. I know that this virus is serious. I understand that. Right now in this county, we have approximately 2,200, in the state of California, right now we have around 2,200 deaths right now. And that's not an insignificant number, I realize that. But you must realize, if you don't know already, California has 40 million people living in it. 40 million. That's not a number you can just dismiss. Yes, 2,200 deaths, that's significant. I'll go over some numbers here, some official numbers of deaths, and we can kind of put this in perspective. And that's what I like to do with this little thing I do, is put it in perspective. And I'm trying to give you some hope, some perspective. I want to stop the panic. This nation's been manipulated into a state of panic right now, and it needs to stop. Yes, this is a worldwide pandemic. I realize that. There's something wrong with this pandemic. And many of you who look at the numbers realize, well, what's the difference between this and SARS and MERS and H1N1 and all the other things that have come out of China for the most part? What's different about this one? So, and I could name off a bunch more viruses that have been spawned out of China. I'll say it right now, and I'll come out and say this. China is the bad guy right now. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the Chinese government is evil. They have caused this. Yes, it's their fault. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of the Wuhan lab and the city of Wuhan, which, by the way, if you don't know it already, the city of Wuhan is the size of Los Angeles. Yeah, it's about 12 million people. It's a huge city, and they went on to complete lockdown. And China wasn't telling the world what was going on. They were holding back information that could have saved lives. If we would have had more of a heads up, and if they would have been more transparent about this, what was going on, they had a Chernobyl blow up in their faces over there. Whether it was planned, whether it was on purpose, whether it was escaped out of the lab, whether it was actually in the wet market, as they say, that came from bats, or a combination of getting out of the lab and going to the wet market, we don't know. All that's going to come out later. But the thing we need to remember is that this is their fault. They need to be held accountable. They need to be held responsible because they are responsible for it. Okay, so I digress a little bit. I wanted to give a little bit more background of my work, and what I used to do was many times, as far as a caregiver, was calming people down when they were out of control. And I dealt with patients who were completely berserk, out of control. They were hurting other people. I've seen many of my staff injured over the course of 20 years working in that hospital. Countless people who either couldn't take the stress of dealing with these individuals, as we're talking about rapists, murderers, carjackers, people that have murdered their families. I mean, it was horrible crimes. Not all of them, but they've all committed some type of violent felony. We're not talking about just, your run-of-the-mill car thief. We're talking about some serious felons there. The hospital normally has about 1,200 of these individuals. 1,200, and that's a lot. And there's about 2,000 people, 2,000 staff that work at that hospital. And I was a supervisor of a housing unit. I had a staff of about 25 people. And we have psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, rehab therapists, along with nurses and psychiatric technicians. Now, if you really wanted to get in some detail, no, I didn't really technically supervise the psychiatrists and the psychologists because I couldn't be their boss, the way the hierarchy works. But it was my housing unit, and as far as safety and the health and safety of the patients and of my staff, I was the boss. So if a psychiatrist was breaking the rules, the policies, was endangering patients or staff in any way, then I was the boss. So so that's just to give you just a kind of a brief description of what my career was like there. And as a shift lead, I would supervise just that shift, that 8-hour shift. Remember, it's a 24/7 facility like most hospitals. And so as a unit supervisor, then I supervised all 3 shifts. So if you think I'm talking about myself too much, I just wanted, because I've done previous programs, if you haven't seen them already, and I ever really explain why I'm here talking, and what's my qualifications. Maybe that's not a lot of qualifications for you, but I have dealt with some very psychiatrically unstable people. I mean, as psychiatrically unstable as they come, to where I've been in physical danger many times. And we do our best, the staff does their best to get these patients in a safe condition. And the goal is rehabilitation, to get them back and be productive members of society. Some don't ever leave. Some are out in a very relatively short time. They finish up their sentence. You have a bunch of different categories of what they call commitments. People that are incompetent to stand trial. Some of them are sent from prison for short stays. Others are deemed not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't want to get into a lot of detail because I will bore you. And it's all, it's all very complex. It's a very complicated situation with civil rights, and obviously I can't talk about patients because of HIPAA laws and privacy laws. But I will say that I had a few pretty high-profile patients, and I can't say names, of course, but it's very sad. It's just it's kind of for me, it was a sad place to work. I just saw, boy, so much. I just, I may have a little bit of PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome myself, from things I've witnessed, especially staff getting injured. I've just seen some horrendous injuries from patient on staff. You may be wondering about patient abuse. I never witnessed any patient abuse. I really didn't. If anybody was getting hurt, it was the staff by the patients. People are attacked brutally all the time. I'm just going to say it happens all the time. I guess I've maybe talked enough about me, because I consider myself to be pretty boring, but that's why I just wanted to explain who I am and my background and why I do this. Now, as far as what's going on now with this coronavirus, it's not inside of where I used to work. It probably will eventually get in there, and I pray for my coworkers, my ex-coworkers, because I am retired now. I just retired recently. And boy, just thinking about it, I just I get I want to say emotional over it, but I have friends in there who's still working in there, and if this virus gets really bad in there, it's hard to say what's going to happen. Now, it is down in there at the federal penitentiary in Lompoc, which is south of us, down towards Santa Barbara, which is about an hour south. And it is inside that facility, and quite a few of the inmates there, because it's a prison, are getting sick. And I should have mentioned that the Tascadero State Hospital, where I worked, is a maximum security facility. Maximum security. It's just like a maximum security prison. And yes, there's guards and guard towers, and it's pretty serious stuff there. And I think when you work there, you start to become a pretty serious person. And it really, 20 years I spent there, it really changed me. I'm very, much less happy-go-lucky than I used to be. And I'm feeling better now that I've been away for several months, and I feel better. So that's the good news. Before I forget, today is May 7th, very important day. It's a National Day of Prayer. And I've been praying a lot today, and I hope you have too. And if you haven't been, get busy, because prayer is very effective. And I have seen things in that hospital that prayer was the only thing that would save these gentlemen from the demons that are in them, whether self-imposed or otherwise. Mental illness so severe that these some of these men are just suffering for decades with mental illness, primarily schizophrenia. If you don't know what schizophrenia is, or don't know much about it, you need to look it up. I don't have time to explain it, but schizophrenia is a delusional disorder, and it runs the gamut. It's got a lot of different symptoms, and it can be very mild and very severe. There's so much that is unknown about schizophrenia. It's a pretty interesting subject, but that is the primary diagnosis for a lot of these patients, along with depression and OCD, and there's so much. I can't get into it. There's mental illness is such a how do I describe it? It's such a, in some ways, subjective thing. Now, doctors put labels on patients that, oh, they're schizophrenic, undifferentiated type, with symptoms of depression mixed with blah, blah, blah. How do I put this? In some ways, it's a very unscientific field, because I've seen doctors that have been so wrong. So wrong. And, in a place like that where some men are trying to beat the court system, yes, there are patients there who are what they call feigning symptoms, i.e. faker. So it happens. There's a percentage of them. We don't know what the percentage is. I was at one point the 1370 coordinator at the facility for several years, and the 1370, that is the incompetent to stand trial category, and these are men that are brought in to become trial competent so they can go back to court. Their court case is put on hold until we, the hospital, deem them to be trial competent or ready for trial, and then they're returned back and their case resumes. And I saw my fair share of fakers, people who were feigning symptoms, and it was pretty prevalent. I'm not going to say any percentage, because I've been wrong. I've been fooled. I've been fooled by gentlemen who I thought were so insane they couldn't ever become competent, and they completely fooled me. And I've seen the opposite, where men who I felt were perfectly sane were completely insane and faking good. So that's why I say it's a subjective field, and you really have to get a feel for people. You really get an eye for the ailments. Yeah, it's an interesting field. So I just thought I'd talk about it. I've never talked about it before much. We've been so focused on this virus right now, this COVID-19 thing. I'm a big constitutional rights advocate. First, Second Amendment, extremely vocal about our rights being trampled on right now, and this is extremely dangerous. What's happening right now, it shouldn't be happening. That's all I'm going to say. We have elected and unelected, more importantly, unelected officials who are running roughshod over us right now and trampling constitutional rights. And there's going to be a reckoning, and you're going to see the lawsuits are just piling up already. It's just beginning. This is going to go on for who knows how long. So we have some people who are really flexing their muscles, especially these health officials are really flexing their muscle right now. And so we have people who are suffering, who have had to close their small business, who have been laid off, and who are starting to get hungry. And this is getting really serious, and it needs to stop. So that's how I feel about it. That's my opinion. Now, if you want to put a comment or something that why you feel that we need to be following their orders to the letter, and to stay inside and not go anywhere, not do anything for indeterminate time, whenever the government tells us we can come out now, I don't agree with this. I do not agree with this, and I feel very strongly about this. Give me your opinion, what you think about this. I just got off Facebook, did a Facebook Live with a lot of friends and people and coworkers and things like that. And it's interesting to see all the different opinions out there. And I'll say it again, what I told, we're all in the same storm. Granted, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. Some people, government officials, are up in some very large boats looking down on us right now, and they're quite dry and they're quite well fed, and they're collecting paychecks. And there are other people who are in small little dinghies who are taking in water, and they're starting to sink, and they have small children, and they're in the same storm, yes, but they're not in the same boat. So that's my point. And if you feel differently, leave a comment. So I'm going to just leave you with that. And this is California lockdown, day 49. I can't even believe this. I started this on day 1, California lockdown, day 1, and I can't believe where we are right now. I can't even believe it. Maybe you can. I can't. This thing has become so much bigger than the virus itself. So, National Day of Prayer. Pray up. It's important. Prayer is effective. Fervent prayer avails much. Okay. God bless you. Till next time.